I do have so many memorable moments, and I can't even list all of them. It would take too long. But one favorite memorable moment is a few years ago when I had a very loaded class, and when I say that, I mean I had 3 children in my class with IEPs, and one in particular who was very anxious. He had very high anxiety. I've also been blessed over the years to have high school helpers. When Sandy O'Donnell had her child lab class, and I would often have a high school helper. Many times, I want to say 4 or 5 times, high school helpers who I had in 1st grade requested to be in my class. And so this one particular class that was very difficult, I had one of those high school helpers from my 1st grade, and she was excited to be helping. When I asked her if she minded working with this little boy who had such high anxiety, she said to me, "Mrs. Widener, don't you remember? I'm the one who had high anxiety in your class in 1st grade, and you helped me out with that. I have no problem at all working with this child." And that's something I'll never forget.
One of them was, there was a student here a couple of years ago, an 8th grader. I can't recall his name, but he just started talking to me a few times, asking me what I did. And one day, when we would pass each other, he knew my first name, so he would say, "Oh, hi Tom, how you doing?" And one day up in the hallway, he was having trouble with his locker, and I was walking by, and he said, "Oh, Tom, I got it." And 2 teachers were standing there, and they said, "You can't call him Tom, you have to call him Mr." And then they both looked at each other and realized they didn't know my last name either. And we both started laughing. So I said, "Mr. R will do. You know, you can just call me that." The other memorable moment was probably the food fight in the cafeteria. I put it down for Steve Massajuski. I just remember him standing there and waiting for it to end, and a couple of students asked if they could duck into the back room where I was going.
Several years ago, I was getting my car serviced in town here, and when I went to pay, a young man behind the counter, he was probably in his mid-20s, said to me, "Oh, you were my French teacher at the middle school." He said, "I'll always remember you." And I thought, oh, he must have really liked some of the lessons I did, or I must have said something very profound and interesting at one point. And he said, "You know, I'll never forget that when I was in your class, or during the time I was in your class, I had an accident and I broke my leg." And he said, "I'll never forget that you were so concerned about what had happened to me and how I was feeling." And he said, "I just thought that was the neatest thing, and I'll always remember that about you." And I know after hearing that, because I didn't remember him, I didn't recognize his name, but I thought, really, it just reinforced how much we impact kids, and in ways that we don't even, think about, and how important this job really is.
I'd have to say it was the year that I had a student who came into our 8th grade with cancer, and we knew that from the beginning. And he was so willing and able to do everything you asked him to do, and he never complained. He wanted to be at school, and he showed such courage all year in the face of what he was going into, that it was absolutely remarkable. And I think that's the most memorable thing I have.
Really good experiences with my foods classes, but I think my most memorable one will be, I had a student in co-op several years ago, and he was ready to drop out of school, and so I kind of took him on as a special project. He couldn't get a job, he needed to work, he was helping out his family, so we got him a job here, and I worked with Val in the cafeteria, and I told him to do a really good job, and he took co-op then for 2 years. He graduated. I went to graduation, I saw him graduate, and he continued to work. And one of the things I remember is one day he had learned to make calzones so good that he taught the cafeteria workers how to make calzones, because he could make them so fast and so good. And I will never forget the smile that was on his face.
One had to do with a student, Richie Perez, who had some challenges, had lots of challenges. And in a middle school, one of the things that we deal with on a regular basis is how kids interact with each other, both positively and negatively. So we're always concerned about kids making fun of each other, teasing each other, bullying each other, and oftentimes they take advantage of the kids who are in a little lesser of position than they are. But Richie was always an outgoing student and would make friends seemingly from every grade level, and it didn't matter how old you are, whether you were an athlete, whether you were in the band, whether you were into play or whatever. He just kind of liked all people, and the kids recognized his friendliness and really became kind of a fixture around the school. Then during our 8th grade assembly at the end of the year, his teacher, Barb Mamek, gave him a student recognition award and called him up on the stage. And simultaneously, all 500 students stood up and gave him a standing ovation just for Richie being Richie. That was duplicated 4 years later, last year at the high school graduation, where when Richie's name was announced, the entire class again stood up and gave him a standing ovation. That's an incredible, memorable moment, something that you can't create or produce, or those kind of spontaneous responses of kids really kind of lets you know that kids really do care about kids, and that the message of caring for others really kind of gets across in their education. That's one story. Another story has to do with, God rest his soul, Sam Rotolo, and his grandchildren. When they came into 6th grade, the oldest one entered 6th grade, I got a request if Sam could bring her into the school on her first day of school. I thought that was a great idea. So one of the things we've always done is the 6th graders always come into the cafeteria first day of school, and we do a little introductory of who are your teachers. We match them up with their advisory teachers and their teams. So we had Sam walk his granddaughter in, and then had him lead the Pledge of Allegiance with the 500 kids in the 6th grade. In the school named after him with his granddaughter. That was an incredibly cool moment, and again, something that didn't take a lot of planning, but again, kind of delved into the history of Batavia and the importance and significance of somebody's previous work and how that carried over the years in the community. Another cool moment was about 3 years ago when we took 1,500 kids to the Cougar game as part of the Ozzie Reading Club, where we had set goals for each grade level to read a certain amount of time during the school year. And we literally packed up every kid in this building, bussed them down to the Cougar game and back. It was a huge undertaking just to move that amount of students in a timely and orderly fashion, and it happened. But it was so cool to see every kid at that game because they had met their reading goal. All of the other really memorable moments happen around, again, it comes down to service and caring for kids. Whether it be the 8th grade penny war this year to raise money for Haiti, or knitting hats for Hesed House, or going Christmas shopping for needy kids, or teams doing different kinds of fundraisers for whatever the organization is. Those kinds of events really help instill in kids that sense of community and caring for those around you. And seeing those successes are really all the things that are most memorable.
Probably was the day that I was hired. That was great. And again, all the friendships that I've made have been wonderful, and it's like a family here for me.
Most memorable? Probably the kids, dealing with the kids.
What are some things that you remember about the kids, some fun things?
Fun things? The way they got me to dress up for different occasions. I've been Santa Claus, I've been Tigger, I've been a pirate, I've been a Jamaican dreadlock guy. Probably the best thing, the funniest thing is when I was Tigger, I walked around the school, but I walked into the early childhood courtyard, and those guys, about 5 on each leg, grabbed me like piranhas, and I couldn't stop laughing. They wouldn't let go. It was hilarious.